Okay,
This is episode 12.
are we going to do, this is the intro we're doing now? Is this the intro to the episode?
Feels awkward. Just here looking at you like right beside you, eh?
Okay, look straight up.
Great tube though.
Look over there.
Hello and welcome to our show.
Okay, this is episode, how many?
12.
12 of Our Mind on Music. Oh. It feels weird when I got a toque and I'm doing om.
It feels weird sitting beside you. We normally sit on the opposite sides
I
of
like
the
looking in
tables.
your face, but now I'm looking at your face.
Yeah, right at you.
Yeah. Looking right at you, and we got the mic right in the middle. Everything's set up.
I'm not going to specify the year because you don't like me dating the shows, but it is December 1st and I could have shaved off my Movember mo.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So I still got the mo.
So you're still collecting money, I hope.
We've been doing really well.
Yeah?
Actually, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
For the school or for you personally?
No, for the Movember, the organization.
Well, do tell. What are you getting? Are we shadowy?
Shadowy men from a shadowy planet.
Well, look.
Ding, 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 ding. The kids in the hall, remember their theme?
No. I'm too old for that. Usually people say I'm too young for that. I'm too old for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy.
I missed out on Kids in the Hall. It was the 80s, right?
No, it was the 90s. It was the 90s.
The 90s, exactly.
I went to see the taping of one of their shows, actually.
Okay. All right. First things first. Let's talk about our guy. It's coming up later.
Okay.
The Pentatonic Way, which is
Neil
a website.
Santos, yeah.
Starring Neil Santos. So he's the star of our episode.
Star.
Yeah.
So Neil...
He's been kind enough to agree to meet us. We are now about almost 9 p.m. in China. Mm-hmm. He's getting up early. What time's he getting up?
It's going to be 8 a.m. for him.
Jeez. It's an ungodly hour.
So Neil, the idea of this episode is we're going to be talking about some of the different ways that you can improve as a musician. Mm-hmm. You know, if you are a musician already and you're thinking about how you want to go to the next step, the next level, or if you're an absolute beginner, you know, a lot of my students are absolute beginners, mm-hmm. you know, and I use a whole bunch of different ways to approach teaching them.
Oh, okay.
So, like, part of my job is to teach them standard notation, like a quarter notes and all those types of things, right?
Yeah. But he doesn't do that.
No. I mean, actually, it's one of the things I want to ask him. I don't think he does that. I think he uses charts and things like that.
Charts, tabs, stuff
Correct.
like that.
Yeah, that type of thing, which I think is perfectly valid.
We used to do the drum charts, too, in you know, when we were getting the karaoke tracks going, we were doing drum charts.
Yeah. I do that for my students sometimes too. Neil is a graduate of Berkeley. He knows his stuff, is what I'm trying to say.
Berkeley is the place we all wanted to go to.
Yeah,
I mean, when I was a kid, that was, you know, a teenager. That's where you wanted to go.
That's super cool. The people that you would have met there and stuff like that. I'm sure he has amazing.
And weren't you
stories.
saying that they have like really cool online courses now? Like
yes, yeah. They're doing some really cool stuff. But basically, the reason I got in contact with Neil is because I saw this thing called the Pentatonic Way that he does, which is a way that he takes intermediate guitarists and tries to teach them how to do the soloing and the sort of the higher level stuff, past just playing the chords and sort of strumming along, you know? Mm-hmm.
What would you consider intermediate, by the way? I've always kind of wondered about that, right?
For this specifically, I'd say if you can already play the songs that you like, play the chords, play along with, you know, the Marty Schwartz videos, you can play along with those. You know, Marty Schwartz.
I'm a keyboard player. What do I know from Marty Schwartz?
What do I know from Marty Schwartz? And so a lot of his lessons are like how to play just the chords for a song that you love, you know? What Neil is doing here is the person who can already do that, but wants to start to like actually make up their own guitar solos, and they want to understand better what you're doing up higher up in the neck, basically. Mm-hmm. You know, that sort of thing, like understanding how arpeggios work and how you can work that into your solos, those types of things. Mm-hmm. And so I started thinking, well, that's awesome in terms of what I do with my kids. I do like a lot of score study. So I give them sheet music and I talk to them about which parts of that will tell you certain information, the beats per minute, what the notation means for when to play and when to not play, and those types of things.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfectly fine way to do it, but it's not the only way that I do it.
But he says the Pentatonic Way, so I'm going to want to pick his brain about this because, you know, so when I'm doing a solo, I oftentimes have to make a decision between, do I follow a scale
Mm-hmm.
that matches,
Mm-hmm.
or do I follow the chord? What I'm saying is, like I could go to a pentatonic in A major instead, right?
Yeah, exactly.
different
Well,
mode.
That's kind of what I want to talk to Neil about, and as you said, pick his brain is to figure out like really what is why the pentatonic. But you were saying that when you were teaching improvising, right?
I do it in blocks,
Right. And
right? So the first, the minor third, and the fourth would be your one block,
Oh, okay.
and then the fifth, the flat seventh, and the octave would be the next block.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I have to thank the Hensel Pushers because I actually got mixed up in my facts. I'm going to call them that.
Quote unquote.
Quote unquote.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, actually, I put my question onto a bunch of social media, like nothing. And I thought, okay, I'm pulling out the big guns. I sent a message through Twitter to Hensel Pushers, and I said, can you
And
please...
Elon got back to you and said, hey, man,
He said, I don't know either.
is this a conspiracy theory? Because I want to retreat
I'll
this.
ask the Hensel folks.
Go ahead, sorry.
And I just, honestly, I thought, I don't know who to turn to ask because I couldn't find the answer to my question. So I sent a message to the Hensel Pushers through Twitter. And they wrote back, like...
Nice.
Yeah, it was really nice. So what I'd like to do is just read, sort of paraphrase this reply. Basically, the answer, the question was, did Fanny Mendelssohn write a violin concerto? Felix Mendelssohn's violin concerto is Opus 46. Hilary Hahn, who's an amazing violinist, it was her 43rd birthday the other day. And I was like, okay, we'll use her version because it's going to be her birthday coming up, And so I found all these versions of this violin concerto, and I was thinking it was Fanny's. And I was like, all of these people have recorded Fanny Mendelssohn's violin concerto. Awesome, yay. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, wait, hold on. And I went back and I checked it, and it was Felix's.
Oh.
But I did think, because you and I had talked about, like, to what extent did they collaborate together? You suggested that idea about collaborating rather than...
I think I'm right.
Well, you're on the right. So...
What's...
I asked the Hensel Pushers. They got right back to me. They said, Fanny Hensel did not write a violin concerto. So that, thank you. That's just clear, and I appreciate that, really. But she did help Felix with a lot of his compositions, especially while he was living in Berlin through 1830. She continued to give him feedback on his work when he was living in other places in
Oh, he was
London.
in Leipzig. What?
Well, it's not.
Oh, it's Leipzig?
Leipzig.
I got to get that right.
And then there was a summer that Fanny Mendelssohn and her husband Wilhelm spent with Ferdinand David, who was a friend of hers. Fanny and her husband spent a summer with Felix and his wife Cecile, whose image, by the way, is often used on Google as Fanny Mendelssohn.
Oh, really?
But it's not her.
That's hilarious.
Like, it's the wrong lady.
Wow.
So anyway, the melody of the violin concerto came to Felix in the summer of 1838. That's 6 years before he completed it. Mm. It's very likely because the Felix and Fanny and their spouses were spending time together. Probably she was helping to collaborate a lot on that.
Okay.
And one of the things that it says in here, which I love, is it's not surprising that the melody came to him at this time because of the creative environment that the two, as in Fanny and Felix, were able to create when living together. Mm-hmm. And that's something we talked about when they were, even as kids. Yeah. They really...
Symbiotic.
Yeah, they really worked together and inspired each other.
Kind of like you and me.
Very much like that.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is I made a mistake. I posted something that said in episode 11 that it was Fanny Mendelssohn's...
It was fake news. That's what he did.
Fake news is what I did.
Posting fake news.
Fanny Mendelssohn's violin concerto. It wasn't. It was Felix's.
Quite a shaming. Really.
I made a mistake.
I mean, do your research, man.
I gotta sweat straight to the moon. The sad part of this story is that then I just put in like just a Google search Fanny Mendelssohn's work. Not much came up. Fanny Mendelssohn's compositions. She had 466 pieces of music.
And nothing comes up?
Well, something comes up. The Hensel Pushers.
Oh, jeez.
Seriously, like their website.
I mean, nothing against them, but
Yeah, no, exactly. Like Francine Vanderheiden has some recordings of Fanny Mendelssohn's music, and the Hansel Pushers. Really, that's
okay.
like there's not a
we
whole
we
lot
will make it our things to do,
You know, the
to pull
mission.
off as a part of this
I'm a man on a mission. Yeah, go ahead.
is to get Fanny's stuff better known.
Agreed.
Do we need to? Okay, so
Somebody's gonna have to go pick that up.
we got to go to Neil.
We're gonna go to our call with Neil right now.
Over to you, Neil.
Over to you, Neil.
Here we go.
All right. You guys sound great.
Okay,
Why,
good.
thank you.
Thank you. I've done training and everything. How you doing, Neil? It's great to actually talk to you now. I mean, you and I have been texting and stuff back and forth, and I've been looking at all your posts. You know,
Great to meet you finally.
Yeah, same here. Thanks
I like
so
your
much,
room.
guys.
Yeah.
What are we
Thanks.
looking at here?
The little man cave. Yeah,
Yes, this is
Beatles.
good.
I got a little,
What was that
little
guitar
drum
on
set.
your shot on your photo that comes up?
Yeah, it's my Michael Kelly guitar.
Is
I
that
Beautiful.
love it.
is that that's the one I suggested
My
you
wife-
use in your last television episode?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did. I went there, I recorded 2 episodes, and I used this on the second one. And I was like, yeah, good.
Very nice.
Good
Yeah.
trade.
That's pretty cool.
I just put some new pickups in it too. These are DiMarzio. I think they're DiMarzio Titans.
Okay.
They sound good. They have a great. They can play complex chords, and you can really like hear every note, which I love. So
Nice.
Yeah. So, all right. So Neil, let's get into it in terms of, I guess the first thing would be to just introduce yourself a little bit. I've been reading a lot of your posts about, about the Pentatonic Way, and also I was looking up some stuff about stuff that you did before this, like the left-handed guitar book, and so maybe you could just tell us a little bit about how you ended up developing the Pentatonic Way and what it is.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. So let me see. I've always been an artist and a musician since way back in the day. And I always thought I had to choose one or the other. And then I got time to go to college. I went to college for art, like to do special effects for movies and stuff, and ended up dropping out of there because it was the wrong school. So at that point, I was like, what am I going to do with my life? So I worked third shift for like a few years at a gas station, and eventually ended up thinking, you know what, I'm going to go to Berkeley. And if they don't let me in, I'm just going to keep applying until they let me in. And luckily they let me in the first time. I was like, all right, great. So I got in there, and I went for film scoring, doing music for movies. And it was a great experience. It was one of the toughest experience I've had in my life, getting through there, just the workload and the not competition, but there's just so many great players, and
I can
they give you
imagine.
so much information. It's like drinking from the fire hose, where you just get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So so I really kind of struggled through there, but I made it through. If I could take my time and write, I understood what was going on. But to improvise, I always struggled, because in that world, it's like it feels like every song is made out of the melodic minor, the harmonic minor, the Lydian flat 7, or the alto dominant. Like, I came out thinking that's how music was written, but it's really not. Like 90% of music is not written that way. It's all like major scales, pentatonic scales and stuff. So it took a while for me to kind of get used to that fact. So I got out of college and I started teaching music, teaching guitar, got my own studio, and taught like for 10 years, just teaching guitar. And that's when I really realized, from transcribing every song under the sun, people would come in like, oh, this is all just very simple scales, but they sound amazing. Like the way
Things
people
repeat
do
themselves,
stuff.
but they're transferable.
Yeah.
Some transferable skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Transcribing is huge. That's a great, skill to have. And also you learn so much from it too.
Absolutely.
So I did that for a bunch of years. And then when my first son was born, I said, I need a job with health benefits. So I
You
was like,
got
I guess
practical,
I'm
did you?
teaching. Yeah,
It
it
happens to
kind
all
of
of us. Most of the time.
priorities, right? So I said, all right, I got back into the world of art and I got a job as a graphic designer for a solar company doing all their trade shows and their website and their, ads for magazines, ads that displayed in China. It was really wild. I'd have to send it out and get it translated and stuff. It's very interesting. But at that time I
Could have
got
called you.
into,
Could call me up.
yeah, I wish I knew that back then. Um, so yeah, then I started getting into web design, and I loved the fact that you could create, designs on screen and people could interact with them and click on stuff and that whole thing. So I started getting into that and started a blog called Global Guitar Network back then, and started writing a book called The Guitar Simplified. And every blog post would be a page in The Guitar Simplified, and then I just compiled them all together and put the book together and
How long did
self-published
that take
that.
you, Neil?
Yeah, it took about a year, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow,
It
it's pretty
was
intense
it was
schedule.
like, yeah. I mean, I could do it while I was working. Luckily, I'm pretty quick at graphics, so I do what they wanted me to do, the company, and my monitor was facing away from everybody. So I'd be like, okay, that's all done, and I'd start working on my stuff, and I got it all together. And that was about 11 years ago. And right around then, I think, Twitter was a big thing. And the thought of like 140 characters and like infographics were coming out, these long and I was really like interested in those. So I was like, if I could combine those and do like little blurbs combined with cool infographics that kind of explain the concept, that would be cool. You know what I mean? Like, because
Yeah.
the problem I had with music books, which I have a million, it's all text or it's all, notation, and nothing makes my eyes cross quicker than that. If I'm reading, I'm like, okay, I'm going to really sit and learn this. I'm like,
By the
It's
way,
like,
what's oh, sorry. I
go ahead.
yeah.
was gonna say, what's your Twitter handle? We'll put it right there when you say it.
Oh yeah, at Pentatonic Way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, on Twitter. So thanks.
No, I was gonna say it's like for us when we get a new keyboard, it's like you get these manuals that used to
Yeah.
be like this,
Yeah. Or
and
two or three of them.
and they stopped doing that because nobody reads them,
Yeah.
you know. But
Exactly.
I get a new keyboard and I'm not gonna get past page 5.
No.
Basically, when I figure out how to turn it on and that kind of stuff, then I do the rest of it by just tweaking, like just playing with it.
Yep.
So yeah, what you're talking about makes sense. Like if you put it all text, and it's like when I started teaching, I was like, okay, kids, we're gonna look at these different scales and we're gonna blah 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 and yada yada yada. And once I realized every time I teach a scale within a song that they're learning that they've
Yeah.
chosen, they
Yeah.
learn that scale
That's when it sticks.
and boom, they've got it.
They
Whereas
bought
if
it.
I go tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone is a major scale, they go, you lost me at hello, you know?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Exactly. But
Yeah.
that's how music was taught, like for decades, right? Where it's just like you had these books, you had Mel Bay, you had like all these things, and that was you just do it this way.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely. Yeah.
reimagining that is
I never knew
important.
Mel Bay was a person for years and years. I really thought that was a publishing company or something because it just was always the Mel Bay guitar book.
Makes me think
Yeah.
of Torme.
Ooh, Mel Torme.
Great
Good
stuff.
call.
What's his nickname? The Silver Fog?
The Silver Fog, is that what it was?
I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah, because he had that smooth voice.
Oh,
Mel Torme.
absolutely. Shag Court. Remember that
Oh, that's
television
right. He
show?
was on.
Oh yeah.
He was the judge's
The judge.
favorite singer.
That's right. And he was in the court. We're going on a bit of a tangent here.
Okay. Okay.
We
Yeah.
do. That's what we do.
We
Okay,
do that.
so
Yeah.
so back to
That's okay.
2010 or 11 or 12 or whatever it was when you were.
I was really interested because it sounded like and I could be wrong on this, but it sounded like at the beginning you were just trying to teach guitar,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
now I remember reading somewhere where you had said, or maybe it was one of your videos that you posted saying like the pentatonic way is for people who can already play and you're trying to take your playing to the next level. It's an intermediate level course. Is that right?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Because like with the Global Guitar Network, going back to that, it was too broad. It was just everything. And, like teaching lessons, I always got to teach like if I know the whole alphabet, I got to teach A, B, and C over and over and over and over and over, like just
Right.
to little kids and stuff, which is fine. But, I want to teach other things. And you have Justin Guitar, who's even around back then. And like, he's really got the whole beginner thing done. Like, you don't really need another beginner course. He's got it and it's great. And I don't know. I wanted so yeah, I got the job working graphic design, and my son was born and I had no practice time. So what I did was I started practicing in the morning and started doing this with the pentatonic scales. I got like 15 minutes every morning. I get up early. What am I going to work on that's going to like move the needle, like, so I decided to start focusing, if I just take pentatonic scales and then just apply them to each chord, what does that do? Because I'm always interested in improvising, but I felt like, I didn't have really a lot of control over it or anything like that, because I was always overwhelmed. Like, oh, should this be the alto dominant scale? Should this be this and that? And it's just too much to think about. So I started coming up with that and it really immediately I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is what I was like looking for. This is the solution. I wish I knew this at Berkeley. Yeah, I was like, ding.
Yeah.
And to do this, you really already need to be able to just play chords, play chord progressions, bar chords, and stuff like that. So if you come in, like I tried to teach this before to people that weren't at that level, they were just starting. I'm like, well, you should learn this, and then be totally confused, or like. So I realized, all right, this is for people that have played. They can play open chords, they can play bar chords, they can play some songs and hold down a progression, but they're at that plateau, right, where they're like, all right, I want to start soloing. There's so many things out there. Should I just learn licks? Should I go learn solos? Should I learn every scale under the sun? Like in like a collection, you got to collect them all. Is that going to help me? So it's at that point where this sort of system would come in, be perfect for them, because, take those chord progressions, and then slowly start applying these scales, the simplest scales in the world. Like a lot of people just blow past pentatonics. They're like, okay, I learned to play scales. All right, here's a scale, pentatonic scale. They learn the first shape, maybe the blues scale, they add in the blues note. Like, okay, I got that done. Now what do I learn? Like they don't spend enough time with it. And the pentatonics are so, versatile and
so where do you
sound.
take it, Neil? Like if it's so for somebody, I mean, if you're just doing the one minor third, fourth, fifth, and flat seventh, where do you take it from there?
Yeah, so that's the minor version, right? So for every
well, I'll just move it up to
right?
the E flat and start on E flat. I don't care. Just do your thing, Neil.
Yeah, you could play, you got to remember that there's a major version too, right? So if you start on the second note of that minor shape, that becomes the root note now of the major version.
Yeah.
So you have that Allman Brothers sound, or that, dead sound. So then you just apply that to each chord. So say you
Elton John did a lot of that in his early days too, right?
Oh yeah,
the major pentatonic a lot.
Yeah, or it reminds me of also like Bruce Hornsby, who I love. Like I love his playing, and I always have. Or even John Popper, Blues
Blues
Traveler.
Traveler. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
The Jimi Hendrix of harmonica.
Yeah, and you're right. He's mostly major pentatonic, right?
Yeah, it has that sound. It's very open sound, like as opposed to. Yeah, exactly. It's everywhere. It's really everywhere. And the cool thing is that if you take these simple scales over each chord, and like say you have a chord progression and you superimpose them over each other, a lot of times it creates the major scale or whichever scale the whole thing is in. But now you're just kind of focusing on the notes that work with the chord of the moment, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yes, well, that's what we were talking about in the intro.
I was just going to say that.
I wanted to ask that question of you is because a lot of times when I'm doing a solo, I'm thinking, now do I stick with my C major, for example, or what do I do when I go to the A major? Sometimes there's an A major, an E major, or whatever. How do I deal with that? Right. So what do you do in that case?
Yeah, that's the problem I ran into, right? So you would think like, oh, all these chords are diatonic to the key of C major,
Yeah.
right? But I always had it like I knew that I had to focus on the chord tones of whatever chord it is, but like my brain wouldn't work fast enough to be like, all right, now we switch to like E minor. So now I got to focus on these 3 or 4 notes out of the 7 notes and try to figure out like, because a lot of it is shapes, I think, on guitar.
Yeah.
Where I think
it's that pentatonic on guitar is so much easier. We were talking about it's so much easier on guitar than piano.
Having said that, applying that way of thinking about it, there's a great thing that you and I talked once about before with Eddie Van Halen, and the way that he basically, it could be argued that he played the keyboards like a guitarist, which is not surprising. It's Eddie Van Halen, right?
Yeah,
but he saw the guitar as shapes, and then you just applied the same concept to the piano, which is why he came up with those amazing things on the piano as well.
Mm-hmm.
So but
yeah, absolutely. So what this does is kind of flips it on its head. So instead of approaching it as a 7-note scale that you have to pick out these 3 or 4 notes for each chord, then instead it's like, all right, here's these simple shapes, the pentatonic shapes, and you just play over the chord of the moment. It'll fit diatonically because all the chords are diatonic.
I got a question. You just said 7-note scale. So what are you considering the 7 note?
No, he's saying instead of considering the 7 like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la,
oh, instead of the major scale. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Instead of trying to find those notes out of there, like E, G, B, right? If you're on E minor, and then when the C chord comes around, now you got to find the C, E, and G, and then jump around like that.
Some songs it works really well though. Like you mentioned Bruce Hornsby. We do The Way It Is, and I just tell the guitar players just solo over G major pentatonic. You'll do fine.
Yeah, and that works too. That works too. But what it'll end up doing is, like, for instance, one time the band I was in, the bass player had to leave for like 6 months. So it was just me and the drummer. And I would just say I was doing The Way It Is, and I'm going to solo. I'm just going to stick to G major pentatonic.
Yeah.
Right. Halfway through, the drummer is going to be lost, right? Because I'm not really outlining the chord progression.
Right.
Once I switched to this approach, I was like,
how would you do it then?
I'd be like, oh, that was the end of the solo. I'd be like, oh, dude, I don't know. I was lost like 10 minutes ago. So this way, it's like
it's a long solo, dude.
You can hear. Well, I'll solo as long as anybody lets me. But once I switched to this, he could like hear the chord progression in the melody lines, Gotcha. So it's really outlining the progression. And that's the thing. Like you can do both approaches. And I remember seeing Guthrie Govan do a video on this where he's like, you can do that approach where you kind of have one scale and you kind of float over the whole progression, or you can like switch scales. And I think of it like a suit, right? You could buy a suit off the rack and you're going to look good because it's a suit. That's like using one scale over the whole progression. Or you can have a tailored suit that fits over each chord and you're going to look even better, So it's something like that.
Yeah. That's interesting because when I approach like a bebop type of thing, if I'm trying to I've been trying to understand John Coltrane for a couple of years now, and I don't mean understand it like why do people listen to it? I mean like because I've heard people say that like, well, it just doesn't make sense. Why do you listen to this? I'm like, because I'm trying to I love the sound of it, but I'm trying to understand how did he make that sound so good, you know? And it's kind of like that. It's like being able to solo to spell out well, like you said, tailor fit to the chord of the moment, right? And I mean that was his genius in Giant Steps,
Oh, absolutely.
You've heard I'm sure you've heard the different versions of Giant Steps when, the first take, he goes in and he just rips through it and it's perfect. Every single note, right? The piano player comes in and it's just like dun, comping chords. Dun. Man, it's just moving like lightning fast, and I don't understand the changes.
Yeah.
The second take, he now
He's
gets
starting
it,
to get it.
and he
Yeah.
wails on it, right? So
Yeah.
it's like the tailor fit example that you're giving right there.
Well, Well, and back to the way it is, that example on piano, I don't play, I follow the chords in that one because I love the chord changes so much. And I love the fact that it starts on that A minor instead of the either the root or the sixth. Right? It kind of throws people off, right? And then coming through on that whole progression, when our bass player does a solo on that, and he doesn't know what to do because we hit the chords for him at the beginning of each. We just hit on the one, we hit the chord so he knows what to do. So
it helps, gives it some context.
Yeah. Now you've got other courses available, or is this the only one?
I did a couple different courses. So a level 1 course kind of goes through the 5 shapes, and it talks about like 6 chord voicings, like 3 major and 3 minor, that can basically cover the entire neck. That's all you really need. It like takes the cage system and kind of distills it down to like 3 shapes for major, 3 shapes for minor, and 2 of them, 2 major and 2 minor, everybody probably already knows, like the bar chords. So I wanted to find chord shapes that we already know, and then go, all right, so you're playing this chord shape, now you know that this pentatonic goes with it, and start matching them up. So it shows you how to match the shapes up with the chords. And then it gets into major and minor, learning the notes on the 2 top strings, so you can place the chords and place the pentatonics where you need to. And a lot of people, maybe they don't know that, so I figured I'd go into that a bit. And then you get into like start jamming on these things, so you can kind of start to hear it. But then the second course focuses more on practicing it and putting, because it's easy to understand, right? The concept that you have a major G major chord, play G major pentatonic over it. You have an A minor chord, play A minor pentatonic. That concept's easy. Putting it into practice.
But I just love the fact that you're doing, because we had this discussion and I was just like, I wonder how he deals with that. And I just love the fact that you're going chord by chord, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You're not doing the old style way where it's like, 12 bar blues and you're just jamming over the same scale.
That I wasn't expecting, actually, from the things that I've seen and stuff like that so far from this. I wasn't expecting that, because as soon as you said that, like I said, I had that like bebop idea that I was thinking like, is there like then a limitation to this? But when you said that, I was like, whoa, where would the limitation be, really?
Yeah.
If you can just follow chord,
it's your imagination.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it. I've been messing around lately with a lot of like film scoring sort of chord progression cliches like C minor to D major.
Mhm.
That's not diatonic. That's not going to fit in any sort of scale. But this works over it because you create these really cool melodies. Then, like, the chord progression drives your melodies and your phrases, and you come up with these really complex phrases that you wouldn't think are pentatonic. It's because when you switch from one to the other, you get that sort of shift.
You don't
That
even notice it. You wouldn't even
no,
notice it.
Yeah.
you would
Yeah.
think I'm thinking in a big scale, but I'm not.
Um,
We
I'm curious about a couple of things. One of them, I got to comment on this because we were just talking about like how you can go chord by chord, which I think is
yeah,
explains a lot to me about what I thought was going to be a limitation that you explained before I asked. I also saw a post that you did like a day or two ago where you were
yeah,
talking about finding the arpeggios. Um, I believe it was
right.
like in the pentatonic. Is that correct? Am I saying that right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I put that together back in the day to kind of help myself visualize, like, you can take a pentatonic scale and, like, so how does it work as major or minor?
Mhm.
And if you start, like, say, on the second degree of that first shape, that's your root for the major. And then what would have been the fifth of minor now is your third. So it's just a different way to look at them, like, to pull out those those arpeggios out of the pentatonics, because pentatonics really are your arpeggio plus two notes, right? So if you're minor, our minor pentatonic is your minor arpeggio plus the 4 or 11 and your flat 7, right? Or the major pentatonic is your major arpeggio, your 1 3 5, but you also have the 2 and you have the major 6.
Right.
And that's why they work, because what it does is it takes that 7 note scale and it pulls out two of the notes that would create dissonance, right? Like,
And to, I mean, yes, everything you said. And the thing that I loved was the visual that you provided, so that even if like the words that you just said, somebody listening to this right now might go blah, don't know what you just
yeah.
said. But if you look at the
That's what
picture of
happened to
it,
me.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's why he's wearing the hat. It holds his,
It's hold my head
it
in.
holds the
Hold my
whole thing
brain. Yeah.
together.
That's a good technique.
But no, when you look at the visual that you posted, the image
Right.
of it, it's like I don't think it could get simpler in terms of if you're at that moment when you understand now how the pentatonic works and the shape that you're showing there, and then you show what you just said, you take out two notes, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, wow, when I saw that picture, it was we were talking earlier about Rick Beato, you
Oh,
know,
I love it.
Rick
Yeah.
roll.
yeah, Rick Roll. We we mention him in like almost every episode, and we call it our Rick Roll.
Oh, nice.
But and he does an explanation of the modes, but he does all the modes.
Oh, fantastic. It's also very visual, the way that
Yes.
he
Yeah.
came all the modes, and they just come across kind of in a diagonal way, and it's just
Yeah.
really interesting if you get a chance to see that.
If you've
Yeah.
seen it, it was for movie scoring. I'm pretty sure
Yes.
it was connected to him talking about scoring for movies, and
Yeah. I
it's
love
just
it.
amazing.
And then
He's
I
he
love
also in that video he goes through some of the more famous scores and how
Oh,
the
yeah.
modes were used for each score.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
yeah.
very
Yeah.
cool.
I'm gonna check it out.
Um,
Um,
so I was going to ask you, like, for the arpeggiating. So
yeah.
this first of all, I'm a keyboard player, so everything you're saying about the guitar means nothing to me. Okay, it means nothing. So I want to ask you, for us dummies on keyboard. So when you're talking about arpeggiating, now normally you would go, you know, C E G C E G C all the way up, or so what would you do in the pentatonic scale? That's my first question, and then I've got a follow up.
It's the same.
Um,
It's
It's
just a
the
different way.
same.
It's
You
just
just
a
follow
different.
the scale up.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It's the same. It's
yeah.
just a different way of looking at how you find the notes for the arpeggio.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
So you just follow it all the way
It's
up.
the 1 3 5 1 3 5. Well, I guess
Yeah.
it's 5 and then the 8, but the same. Just a different way of looking at it. Instead of pulling it out of 7 notes, you pull it out of 5.
Hmm. But are you are
Yep.
you taking it over 2 octaves? So are you going C E G? Or are
C
you
E G
going
C.
C D E G A C like that? What are you doing?
Oh, no, probably if I was doing arpeggios, I'd just stick to the tritone or the
Yeah,
seventh. But it would be so. I feel like piano players have it easy
I know.
because you have that one octave, and once you learn that one octave, it's all there, and it's
Yeah,
all laid out in front of you. And I think that's beautiful, and that's why I feel like piano players have such a sense of harmony and what to add. You
yeah,
know, like for tensions and just everything's laid out. On guitar, it's like a lot of like so triads would be a lot of these sort of triangle shapes, and then you take the triangle
mm,
shape, put it up here, but then you get to the B string, and that's like tuned differently. So now the triangle shape's different. So it's like this spider web, and like on piano, like you have one middle C, but on guitar you have like two or three. I don't even know exactly, but there's
yeah,
this
Mhm.
here, but it's also here, but it's
yeah.
also here, and you're like, Ugh. So
Hmm.
that's part of the confusion, right? So then I was just pentatonics, keep it simple.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna show up, so I'll superimpose this as well. You posted this.
Yeah.
Can you see that? And you
Yep.
were commenting that apparently I didn't see the post that you were referring to, but apparently some people were commenting about not using about using non-traditional notation as opposed to learning how to read traditional
Right.
notation, right? And I was just
Yeah.
curious, like, because one of the things people who might be listening to this thinking, this sounds cool. How do you present it?
Yeah. I try to avoid traditional notation, just because I feel like it's a blocker. It might keep people from, you know, getting this sort of information.
Mhm.
So I really try to just incorporate a lot of graphics, a lot of images. I have a cheat sheet. I don't know if this will show up, but mainly it's just grids.
Right.
I come from a graphic design background, so I try to just distill information to just a few like
Yeah.
diagrams and stuff. Like here are the three chords for major or
Hmm.
minor. I can't read which one. Yeah, minor, and then how each pentatonic just aligns with it. This one fits right over it. This one is like secondary and shares a few of the notes. So I try to, because this is how my brain works,
Yeah.
and hopefully it'll help someone else.
Yeah, but you know
Like
what? I think that's the way to go because when things have been done the same way for so long, just
yeah,
everybody assumes that that's the best way to look at it. And when you see it from a different perspective, even though you might not personally have looked at it that way, you kind of, a whole group of people are going to be able to click in on that the way that
I
you're doing it. I was going to
I hope
say,
so.
you said something about there are two things like any genre improvise over any genre of music. So how do you put that into practice in a class?
Yeah, I mean, it works because chord progressions are chord progressions. And if you follow each chord, then it's more, and then you play the pentatonics and it's going to sound good no matter what style it is. But then
Yeah,
it's more about like the rhythm of it and the phrases
yeah,
and like the cliched sort of licks and things. Like if you're doing funk, you might just, be jamming on one note and add some chromatics in between, like the meters or something, like fill in the blanks in between the pentatonics or turn them into chords. Um, that's a great thing about pentatonics too. You can grab just any random group of notes out of that shape, and now you're using it to make voicings and comp, which is cool. And then it's all about the rhythm. So you do it like a
yeah,
staccato, tick, 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 tick. Now it's funk, right? And then,
Right.
or if it's metal, now you're holding notes and bending notes, and maybe you're adding some other chromatic notes that are like the major seven or that sharp four, and then you have like a Dimebag Darrell, Zach Wild sort of sound, in um, or you're doing country. Then you're going to start doing like a lot of those like Hendrixy sort of, like it's
yeah,
it's all about context, and when you start playing it with it, playing along to that style, these pentatonic, it's just kind of pulls you in that direction. Like, oh, this is how they get that sound, and this is how they get that sound, and I haven't run into any um, situations where it doesn't work, except sometimes heavy metal tunes you can only play the harmonic minor. That's the only thing that's going to make sense over it for some reason because they wrote the riff
yeah,
in that. And like if you play pentatonic, it's going to sound too not bluesy. I mean, blues works over everything,
Hmm.
but it won't sound as like exotic or
We're
whatever
doing
as that
metal. We
one.
just like to hang on that sharp fourth, flat fifth. Just hang
Yeah.
on that sucker for a
The
while.
tritone puppy.
Major seven.
Having
Yeah.
said that, like I use a pentatonic on the guitar and just add in um add in some passing notes in between, and you can make it sound really really good with metal type music as well because it gives it more of a classical feel
Yep.
to it rather than a bluesy feel. It's not that
Yeah.
hard to once you know those shapes, then it's
Yep.
not that hard to improvise little tweaks to it. So not just the rhythm stuff, but you can add in a couple passing tones in between there, kind of like what
Yep.
you're saying with the funky kind of thing, right? It's the same idea.
Yeah.
Actually, add in a couple passing tones, and suddenly it sounds like classical.
The other thing is
Yeah.
you guys like on and never having soloed on guitar, you guys can speak to this better than I can, but it just seems to me that there's so much more uh, tonalities that you can work with on a guitar than on a keyboard. I mean, you can mess around with some of the keyboard sounds these days are pretty dynamic
Yeah.
and move around. If you know what you're doing with them, you can do that a little bit. But on guitar, you've got like you said, on one note, you've got all kinds of options.
Yeah, you could use your
Yeah.
pick to squelch it a little bit, or you can not
A
use the
bit.
pick just for finger picking, gives it a different sound, and those types of things. You can
Yep.
do a little vibrato on it. Having said that, um, I will say, like we've had this discussion about I'm a big Thelonious Monk fan.
Oh, I
And
love Thelonious Monk.
thank you. Thank you. Just saying. He's a guitar player and he loves Monk. I mean,
Yeah.
He's
but
amazing.
so one of the things, because we're at some point gonna just dig in and do an episode on Monk and
Mhm.
why he was amazing.
His job is to convert me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just
Are you the
thinking, come
Coltrane
on.
guy or who's your
I'm
guy?
Miles. I'm
Miles. Oh, I
Miles
love
Davis.
Miles too.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
Miles too.
It's kind of I would argue,
And for piano, it'd be Oscar Peterson, but
yeah. Yeah. I
Oh yeah.
mean, I can't disagree with that. In fact, I was doing a little comparison
were you?
over the weekend because I was like, oh, I love Thelonious Monk, but for different reasons. And part of the thing is the way he created tone on the piano,
Yeah, that's true.
which you can do it. It's just a
Yeah.
lot harder than,
Yeah.
the ways that we do it on the guitar. It's not as hard to do.
So
And
flexible on guitar. And just listen to Vince Gill, I mean, or somebody like that that's just playing
Yeah.
au naturel and you know what he
Yeah.
can do.
right.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have the notes you play, and then you can color them any way you want. Like
Right.
I put together a pedal board, pandemic pedal board.
Oh, the pandemic pedal board. I like
I
that.
love it. I love it. But
That's classic.
yeah, the thing with Monk that I love, and you're right, he does sound different than any other player because of the way he attacks the keys, like, and
Yeah.
it's almost what I love about him is his rhythm, his sense of rhythm, where it's almost it reminds me, and this is weird, like, you know,
Comparison.
comparison, Old Dirty Bastard. I don't know if you do that sort of nonchalance kind of that Monk has, where he's just kind of just
Yeah.
playing, and you're like, how's it sound so good? Like, and it doesn't sound like anybody else, and it sounds almost wild, but it's all contained.
Well, that's the
With
Hendrix
rhythm.
for me. That's the Hendrix appeal.
Yeah.
Is he'll hit a note like he wasn't really thinking about it, but then he bends it in just such like right at the right amount, and he hits it just the right amount of sloppiness to make it
Yeah.
feel wild. But
Yeah.
Because we grow up. No, the reason I'm laughing
I-
is because when when we were going through our studio days, everything had
Yeah.
to be perfect.
yes,
Yeah.
And especially when we got into, we were talking about doing digital recording and MIDI and all this, and everything's quantized to the nth degree, and
Yeah.
and this idea of being sloppy. Are you kidding me? Like get on the
Nail it. Well, Neil Peart did a thing from Rush. He did an interview once where he talked about so many years of playing that way because he was a metronome, the guy. I mean, he was
Right.
just a human metronome. And he said that he loved jazz as well. And he wanted to be able to play with a bit of a behind or in front of the beat feel. And he couldn't do it
Yeah.
because he
Yeah.
just had gotten so used to hitting it exactly spot on. So he had to go back and take lessons to play off the beat. Which
So I think the
Neil
thing
Peart taking drum lessons. It's like
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that it would be like kind of the thing where if you're teaching a guy and you're doing it in Neil's way here, which is, you play over the chord and you can sense that this guy, whoever the student is, has that one way or the other that he does things, and you don't have to say to him like, oh no, 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 you have to like, blah, blah, you don't have to be so uh strict on traditional teaching that way. You can let him
Right.
you can let him find his own way, or her
Exactly.
find their own way, right?
that's a really good way to put it, I think, because that's one of the things. Like typically in my classes, we talked to just in chats, you and I, about doing
Yeah.
the score study that I do in my classes, and that's how I approach it from the beginning. I want them to learn at least to recognize a little bit of standard notation, but then I have a girl who's on the drums and she's
Yeah.
looking at drum standard notation and she's like, what does that mean? And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, here's the hi-hat, here's the kick, here's the this and that. And I do like basically like a tab, not basically, I do a tab for her. And she's
Yep.
like,
No
They
problem.
get
why
it.
would I
Get
stick
away.
to that way that's not working for her?
Yeah.
She can get that
Exactly.
later. If she decides I love the drums and she just goes off with it,
Well, or if
she'll
she has
learn
a
it later.
need, if she
Yeah,
has a
if she
need
ever
for it.
needs it, which is why I teach scales and chords, how to build chords,
Yep.
all of those sorts of like choosing inversions of chords, for example. I mean, I could just show them do you want to build a snowman? You take the bottom and put it on but I don't. I say, okay, what song do you guys want to play? And they say Believer by Imagine Dragons. And I go, okay.
Mhm.
So you need to learn these three chords because it's only three chords in the whole song. And now you're going to play around with how you're going to play those chords. How are you going to
Right.
interpret it so that we make our version of it? Right. And I don't
Yeah.
have to do that necessarily in standard notation. I could show that in tabs. I can show it in charts.
Yep.
What's working for them at that moment and what's the need and what suits their learning style.
Mhm.
It reminds me of like when I first started coming out with this, like talking about letting them find their own way. Like part of the idea that came to me was back in the day, like 10 years ago, there was an article I read about this guy that was making these little spider looking robots, right? And he's trying to like teach them to do stuff.
It's like
And
that
he
movie
had a
with Gene Simmons.
breakthrough.
Sorry.
Oh yeah.
You remember?
What movie is that? I remember that movie. But yeah, they look like that. And he had to teach them to do stuff. And he had a breakthrough. He's like, all right, instead of me teaching them like to go from here to go to the target, he'd have to teach him to walk over this and like lift this leg so much and then walk around here and turn 30 degrees and turn. He realized that if he just gave them, all right, here's a little bit of info, you're going to start, and then you have to get there and do it whatever way you can. And you had a breakthrough, the thing would like figure it out and get there in its own way. And it's almost like that. Instead of saying, all right, you have to know all these different things to make music. It's like, here, you just need to know this and you need to know where you're trying to get to and just find your own way, find your own voice and stuff like that. So I think that's great. That's exactly the idea, is give them enough structure that they sound good and they don't veer off, but then say, enough freedom to say,
So you're saying that's the beauty of the pentatonic way,
that is the
right?
beauty of the
Is that
pentatonic way.
So it fits perfectly
Experimentation.
because we do um in my classes anyway, in our school, in the way that we approach things, it's inquiry based learning, which means what you just finished saying. You give them enough information so that they know what the questions are. You give them enough information so that they know sort of some options of paths that they can go down to answer the question, and then you let them figure it out.
Mhm.
You don't leave them just hanging there. You've got the pentatonic
Right.
way, you've got the pentatonic, and then like we were talking about earlier with arpeggios, like if you might say, okay, I don't want to go da 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 up the pentatonic scale. I want to break it up a bit. So I apply that to figure out how to do the arpeggios. Once they know how to do that, they can add in those passing notes. So they can change the sound of it. They can change the tonality of it. Those are things that they apply. You said the phrase, it comes down to their imagination, right?
Yes.
That's the limitation, is their imagination, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I think fits in really well with the whole concept of how to improve yourself as a musician. Here's one format, the pentatonic way, that fits into a lot of, I mean, you said almost any, improvise over nearly any chord progression.
That's
That's
more like that medical cures 99.9% of all your symptoms. You know, I don't want to get sued. So
you got to put that on your website, Neil.
Yeah, put a
99% 9 effective.
Yeah.
Proven 99.9% effective. Hey, I was gonna say too that you know, I was gonna say something, and then it skipped me. Go ahead, Jeremy.
I told you, he puts on the toque, but sometimes it leaks out. You know, you never.
It seems so loose and so like very loose and stuff, but they're so tight, and it's so difficult to do what they do. You know, like Monk always seems to be playing behind the beat or ahead of the beat.
That was the question. I posted that because I was listening to Thelonious Monk, and my question was, how far behind the beat can you be before you fall off it onto the next beat? Really, if you think of it like,
yeah,
you know, because it was like he was so far behind the beat, but he nailed it.
Was he from New Orleans by any chance? Because those New Orleans guys do that a fair bit.
Monk wasn't from New Orleans.
I'm not sure.
I don't think so. Now I look it up again. Last time you asked me,
educate me.
Education. That's it.
Even his phrases, right? Like he'd like, you know, da 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 da.
Great notation.
Like it's like stuttering. It's like coming back on itself. It's very cool, man.
And even that, like what I love about his rhythm is he'll set that up so that that's in your mind, right?
He's gonna play a clip of that right now.
Okay, yeah. Straight No Chaser. The purpose of our episode is to talk about how to improve as a musician overall. And one of the things that you said, one of the reasons you said that you created the Pentatonic way was because when your first son was born, you found that you didn't have time to practice. You couldn't find the time to actually practice.
Right.
And for all of us, that's always the challenge, especially when you're a working musician. You play a lot of your day, but how much
unless
time
you're Rocky.
Unless you're his guitar player who is like, because you
sleeps
mentioned
with his guitar, his girlfriend's on the other side of the guitar.
I mean, so many things that you mentioned. Guthrie, you say Govan? I thought it was Guthrie.
Yeah.
Okay, Guthrie Govan.
Govan, I'm not sure.
The reason I don't know either, but the reason I know who that is because Rocky, Leon's guitar player, introduced me to that. He's like, you got to watch this guy. And so I did like a whole week of study of this guy because I just, you know, you go down this rabbit hole of the guy is so amazing.
Yeah.
Have you got the pandemic pedal board right there handy?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you show it to us?
Because if you don't show it, Rocky's going to kill us, I'm sure.
Nice. Looks like something out of Ghostbusters.
It does. It looks like your proton pack.
Yeah. I have some ghosts stuck in here. I got this first. That's a Richie Kotzen pedal, and it has like a ton of stuff. It has like reverb, delay, Sans amp, boost, or overdrive, and then a boost. Then I was like, well, I can fit more on this board, right? So then I had to get it's like a very heavy. It's a gent pedal. This is like a synth pedal, like you were talking about changing the tonality of your playing.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to notes you play, but now you can color it like a synth. This is like an auto-wah.
Nice.
So sorry, the synth pedal, does that I'm pointing at it like you can see me doing that. The synth pedal, is that one of the ones that changes like your guitar to a piano? Is it like that?
It won't do piano. It does more like
actual
from synth. The cars, you know, like from the cars.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
That sort of sound. Yeah. And then this one is almost like a synth pedal too, but it's more like reverb, but it'll sound like pads behind whatever you're playing. So if you play chord, it's just almost like Pliny or something, where he has like that haunting sort of keyboard playing everything else he plays, you know.
that little green guy?
Fat.
No, that's the boost. That's another boost. So when I go into a solo, I kick that on and it boosts it up a couple decibels, but it also has like I can boost the lows and highs separately too. So
Nice.
So why would you use that instead of like a volume pedal? Do you find it?
Oh, well, you just click it in. It's just a quick click to
yep,
to the level that you want it at, right?
yep, yeah, exactly. I have a Gator volume pedal, but I always would like hit it by accident. It wouldn't be all the way up. Some people are really good at volume pedals, and but that's not me. So I
I'm
was just
not
like,
good at volume
No,
pedals.
no, no. I wasn't. I was thinking Rocky would be one of those guys that he'd have the precision. But
No, he's got a clicker as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I like the volume pedal for solos because I like the dynamic that I can build into it. I play it as part of the solo kind of,
Yeah.
you know?
oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So like so I can hit a
Like guys
note.
used to ride their volume,
Yeah,
their
exactly.
volume pot.
Yeah, I
I do
mean,
a
I'm
lot
not
of
talking
that.
about I'm talking about like I can hit a note and I can swell the
Swell it in.
volume
Yeah.
without changing the note. So
That's cool.
it just gives you a little
Yeah.
crescendo,
Oh,
you know?
well, I'm thinking of Mark Knopfler used to do stuff like that as well, a lot.
Oh, in
Oh, yeah,
Brothers in Arms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
great album.
Yeah, well that
Yeah.
song, like when he
The
does
Tunnel of Love. He does it on that one too.
okay.
When it breaks down, the whole thing breaks down in the middle, and then he just does these like swells. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I guess one of the things I don't know if I'm skipping around too much, but I'm one of the things that I was thinking about in terms of improving as a musician is the arguments for and against a couple of things, like traditional lessons versus like just jamming. You know, is
Right.
there something like jam tracks that I could play along with?
Yeah.
And how
Yep.
structured is it?
Yeah.
You know, is there a structure to it?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good question. And it goes back to what we are talking about before with the different level of the courses. So that first course is all about teaching the system and the theory. And the second course is all based around different chord progressions you might find and has backing tracks and guided backing tracks that show you which pentatonic to use over which chord. And they're kind of structured in four modules. The first one focuses on tunes that just use the primary chords, 1, 4, and 5.
Mhm.
And you start with just 1 and 4 or something, and then we add the third one in. It like increases in difficulty. And the second module starts incorporating like the 3 minor diatonic minor chords into those chords. So you have 1, 4, 5, and maybe the 3 chord, 1, 4, 5, and the 6 chord.
Yeah.
And then the next module focuses on what I call dual personality, like taking a chord that would be major in a diatonic key, like a major fourth, but now you make it a minor fourth, right? Which is like in Radiohead tunes at the sad 4.
Yeah.
And then learning how to focus on progressions, excuse me, that have that chord in it, or maybe like a major 6 chord. And then the fourth module focuses on chords like the flat 6 major, the flat 3 major, these flatted major chords that show up in like grunge music or film scores and stuff. So then you practice over backing tracks with those.
Beethoven.
Yeah.
He did some
So
stuff.
Yeah. He was all right.
he's non-diatonic.
He was okay.
I heard of him. He didn't hear me.
I remembered what I was going to say or comment on, and maybe get your comment as well. So on guitar, one advantage that you have on guitar is that those pentatonic scales, the shapes are the same, no matter where you go on the neck.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the benefit opposed to piano, where it's always going to be different. Yeah, it's always just those 5 shapes, and they're super simple to kind of memorize, just 2 notes per string, and just sit in front of the TV and play them for like a couple days, and you're gonna have them down. And they once you know them, they're gonna be useful forever. You're never gonna regret learning them.
It's similar with the chords, just like you mentioned the perfect fourth and the perfect fifth. So when I'm teaching my kids about the concept of improvising, I use the 1-4-5, which is the perfect degrees, right? And the 8, which is the 1-4-5 are perfect, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
So I use those, and then I give them some rules that they have to try to improvise over. So and on the guitar, once you show bar chords, they can do that anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
But should we allow the man to?
Yeah.
You've been generous with your time. Thank you very much.
It's
my pleasure, guys. This has been amazing. Thank you so much.
This is really cool. Let's let you like you said, plug away.
Sure. Yeah. If if anybody's interested in learning more about this technique and this system, they can check out the pentatonicway.com. And on there at the top of the page, there's a free cheat sheet that I give out that's jam-packed with all sorts of information. It's called the 5 Steps of the Way. And it's right at the top. Just sign up.
Very
the
Buddhist.
email
Yeah.
list. And,
Very Buddhist.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's the way. It's the simple path, you know.
Have you made that connection with the Mandalorian yet or not?
Actually, that came out after, and now every time I'm like, this is the way. It is the way.
Our show's called Our Mind on Music, which is OM. So we do OM.
Oh, nice. So it fits right in.
Yeah. The mini course you had said $29.99.
Yep. Yeah. So there's so much packed into that cheat sheet that I decided to make a little mini course that accompanies it to go into each one. Like you can have the cheat sheet and figure it out. But if you want to go deeper into that and really start, being able to apply it to your playing in the easiest way, I put that together to be helpful,
For Our Mind on Music listeners, if they're interested, they can get the mini course for free.
Yep, absolutely.
Are you
absolutely.
Sure?
So,
are you sure?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. And what they just go in, and when you're purchasing it, how about this? They put in the coupon code OMOM.
I like it.
Love it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, they'll get it free. I think they're gonna love it. So.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think some of our listeners are musicians. I don't know that for sure. I think so.
Some of them are just our family. I think most of them.
My sisters definitely are avid listeners.
Those are good sisters right there.
All right, Neil, thanks very much for taking your time. Honestly, it was really good of you to take the time to talk with us. We appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And I love your show. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Man. Yeah, I love what you're doing as well. And I hope we'll keep in contact.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
Cheers, bud.
Talk to you later.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Good night.